Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Elijah's Bones YouTube channel. Here with us, Stephen Witsit, your friendly host. Today, I'm going into part three and looking at the Olivet Discourse from a historical premill apologetics and responding, of course, to two very confused men, as we've addressed before. Let me see. I want to start by making a note that in part two, and I put out a real simple 12-minute little video about some of their comments and things and wanted to bring out again is this idea that Don Preston teaches that Jesus had to die a spiritual death on the cross. Now, he's very adamant in the idea that it was substitutionary death that Jesus had to die with on the cross. Well, my issue is, and we're going to show it to be inconsistent, illogical. Um, it just doesn't make any kind of proper sense whatsoever. So I want you to think about it. Substitutionary, he said, is where you take the place of somebody else. So Jesus had to die a spiritual death to pay for our sins. Unfortunately, he also says at the same time that all men, because they sin, are spiritually dead. So, how does Christ dying spiritually on the cross pay for our spiritual death when we're already spiritually dead? He can't be the substitute for our spiritual death if we're already spiritually dead before we experience the new birth. See, that's a contradiction. Jesus could not have died just simply a spiritual death on the cross to pay for our spiritual death. He died on the cross. The shedding of his blood was the atoning sacrifices that was needed for the forgiveness of sin. Not dying for a spiritual death, which is a whole different subject altogether. That's totally stupid. But he had to die a physical death on the cross. And we explained that from Genesis 3 and why that is all true. But getting back then to the Olivet, let me make a few foundational statements that have to be made very, very clear. One, I am not a partial preterist by any means. I will not identify with that camp in any sense or means. The main reason is that the majority of them believe that Revelation was fulfilled in 70 AD. And I do not. I believe that all of the Olivet was fulfilled in 70 AD, but had nothing to do with the book of Revelations. I hold to the late date for the book of Revelations, and that's something I can get into in my next video and explain that why after we've dealt with the Olivet Discourse. I will be looking at some of my book and comments and things that I made and I wrote, and you'll understand why I'm doing it. But for this purposes here, we're dealing with the Olivet. So let me switch over here and we go to Matthew 24. And here's what I want to do. I hope this is big enough for everybody to see. I don't know much about it. Expanding it, making it bigger, really. But here we go. I want to look at a couple things. We know the first two questions answered. You see all these things. Jesus said there will not be one stone left upon another. It'll all be thrown down. So they come to the Mount of Olives, which is just on the other side of the book of Kidron. Tell us, when will these things be? When will the temple be torn down? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So, end of the age. If the temple is being destroyed and torn down, then we have to admit that there's some kind of ending. They would think in their minds that that would be the end of the worship system. What would it be the ending? What kind of age? What is coming really to an end? And what would be the sign of your coming? Now, is he asking about a second coming? Or what is he talking about? will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age. Well, we'll have to get into that a little bit further into it. What kind of coming are we talking about? And they assumed that it was him. That's quite an interesting kind of an idea. What will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age? And so they would have to associate, okay, he's coming at the end of the age to do what? Destroy the temple, to throw it down. Well, that has to mean that it's him himself, right? So he has to come in some sense. So he goes through all the signs. How do you know when the angel is coming? You know, you see all these things that'll happen, the famines, earthquakes, and all those kind of things. Gospel is going to be preached throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel, which would be very clear to them, all that would go on. Lightning comes from the east to west, so will the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. He goes on, the coming of the Son of Man. There will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and all the tribes of earth. They will see the Son of Man coming in clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Again, this is partial to Zechariah 12. And then coming on great clouds. Heaven, my earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So heaven and earth is going to pass away. That's another subject in itself. So in that verse right there, 30, of course, is where everybody says, okay, this is talking about the second coming, and second coming. Now, this goes back to the idea of the word coming. And sign of your coming, verse 3. I'm going to look at some specific words. Oh, this is going to go slow on me today, I guess. I'm going to be a little bit obnoxious. All right, that coming. Let's first of all look at that word parousia. Now, I didn't actually bring this up, but in one of my other books, I had gotten quite a discussion with Don Preston over the word parousia. Let's look at it. As you can see right here, the only time it's used in the Gospels, and all of the Gospels, is only in Matthew, and it's only in Matthew 24 4 times. It means presence, a coming, an arrival, advent, especially of the second coming of Christ. Now, people, full predators, of course, you can say that's biased. Parousia from paron, to be present, arrive into a situation properly, coming, especially the arrival of the owner, who alone can deal with the situation. Parousia is a technical term with reference to the visit of a king or some other official, a royal visit. Hence, that's why it was applied to Jesus. It's the royal visit of a king who is absent, who is now going to be there, and his personal presence. It is a noun, so that has to be a person, place, or a thing, so it's an event. The event of his coming, not the verb. Okay, so presence, it is used, I believe, 24 times it's used, 6 times it's used of Christ specifically. The other few times it is talking once about his first coming. One time it's used concerning the coming of the lawless one in 2 Thessalonians. And then the other times it refers to someone who is coming. It's from the present participle of parami, being near. We're looking at here. Presence, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, opposed to parousia in Philippians 2:12. Okay, the word is used in Maccabees, and it's talking about something different. It's talking about a army that is coming on behalf of the presence of one coming, hence the coming, arrival, advent, the future visitor return from heaven. It uses those 16. It is called in Ecclesiastical writings. Justin Martyr, Typho, all those different ways that it is used about somebody who is coming and being present after being absent. That is how Paul is the one who used the word. You don't see it used in Thessalonians. In James, it's used, and then Second Peter, and the promise that they pretty much, and even John 2:28, shrink in shame at his parousia, his coming, his presence, after being absent. So now he is the rival of him, is what the word is basically used for. It is never used for a let's see, felt presence or spiritual presence, but it is always talk about the person who comes. Technical term, king in Roman world, it's a technical term. A king who is coming to a city on a royal visit, who is not there, but now he is present and he's being there. So that's the first thing that needs to be cleared. It's used two different ways. As a coming on clouds, as a person who is coming, and Christ in his coming. So, in what sense does Matthew use the word, the coming of the Son of Man? In what way is he coming? Well, we mentioned verse 30. It's coming on clouds. It is a quote from Daniel 7:13-14. And I will going to look a little bit deeper into this. It says, I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the cloud of heaven there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given a dominion, glory, and a kingdom. All the peoples, nation, language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. So he was given the kingdom when? When he ascended into heaven. So he was presented before the Ancient of Days. The Ancient of Days is in heaven. Now, we're talking about a vision, but right in the middle of the vision, right, in verse 12, as for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions. I saw one who, in the clouds of heaven, there came one like the Son of Man. He came to the Ancient of Days, sat down at his right hand, and what? Coming on clouds. Well, coming on clouds we know is judgment language. So it is not about his second coming, but the coming of judgment. And this is much of what Don Preston argues. And one of the few points that we have total agreement in is that in this coming, the Roman army was to be coming as a representative of God's judgment. That can best certainly clear in Matthew 26. He says, from here on out, from after this point, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God and coming on clouds. You will see that he ascended into heaven, and this judgment that comes, when it comes on Jerusalem in 70 AD, it is coming because of Jesus sent that command of judgment against him. Now, what has happened is Sullivan, especially Sullivan, and Preston both argue, and when we look at the thing and actually go over his words and stuff, you'll see it. But he claims that this passage is not about Jesus' ascension, but his coming down. And the reason they say is because over here, as I looked, the horn made war, the interpretation of the vision, right? Until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given for the saints of Messiah, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. So this is the Ancient of Days coming down. So this is supposed to be an interpretation of the vision. But the vision itself is not a vision of him coming down. It can't be, not even close. There's scholar after scholar after scholar who says no. But in the LLX, Sullivan thinks that he has found the answer. Why it is about a second coming. Yet denying the fact that they deny that Jesus himself comes down bodily, physically, or whatever else during AD 70. That was not a second coming. The army comes and goes. But at the same time, it is his coming down. And so this is kind of laughable on the whole thing. Let me bring up my book, and we're going to talk about this. As early as 1946, Wilson recognized the connection of the terminology Son of Man as being tied to Daniel 7. The SV and many modern-day English versions have it translated. Daniel says, I saw in the night visions, behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came like a son of man, and he came to the ancient days and was presented for. Now, here in the LXX, it's a slightly different reading. I was watching the night visions, and lo, as it were, a son of man was coming upon the clouds of heaven, and he came as far as the ancient of days, and the attendants were present with him. So the emphasis is on the presence of the Son of Man, or son of a human being, as implied the old Greek stressing the humanity of Jesus over and against any implication of deity. So Daniel 7:13 is a messianic passage which was understood by Caiaphas, as I just mentioned before, in Matthew 26, causing him to rebuke Jesus for his blasphemy. So here it is in the Theodotion, and here's in the Greek, as the Son of Man, as Son of Man, Erkomenos, and here it says Kito, Erkito, which is a form of Erkome, a coming, and Humremo Parin. The different things in there. The wording is a little bit different in there, but we're looking at that word for as, right? Now, we'll go on here. N.T. Wright said that he believed the Son of Man text found in the Gospel was not second appearing text at all, but were often misread to mean that. Instead, he believed they were about Jesus' vindication as proven by his resurrection, ascension, and judgment on Jerusalem, which came in A.D. 70. So the Son of Man text found in the Gospel all referred to Daniel 17, that it would indicate by context this coming is a coming of judgment. From the Son of Man who ascended into heaven, sat down at the right hand of the Father, and was given dominion over the kingdom until he makes his enemy his footstools. Now, the sign of the Son of Man. When Jesus came in judgment, there were clouds, and he talks about the clouds and things like that happened in judgment in the Old Testament, especially during the wilderness. So, coming in clouds is a form of judgment. So N.T. Wright affirms that Daniel 7 text itself denotes an upward motion and not a downward one. The Son of Man is being presented before the Ancient of Days. The Son of Man is not pictured as coming down out of heaven in accord with Acts 1:11 or any other New Testament passage. R.T. France, the language about the Son of Man in clouds is drawn from Daniel 17, which, as we have already seen, points to the vindication and enthronement of Jesus rather to his parousia. Kashmir says the same thing. Like a human became in the like the Son of Man, his own work from that. Then Kazin, another scholar, says the same thing. Daniel Zacharias in his paper, Old Greek, Son of Man presents the case the Alex completely supports the idea of the upward motion and not one coming down from the first century church who understood this connection. And again, he said the same thing. There's here, Prairie and others, they do say it is because Hitchcock, Ice, and others identify with the dispensational camp. They believe that it is got to be about it, but they're not looking at it. Son of Man refers to the parousia or second appearing. That's what they connected. So, in opposition, what I pointed out is two ways historically in Scripture. The first one was the coming of an army, representation of God coming in judgment. Second Maccabees, that word is used to describe God's army coming, not a person. Or the coming of a person in Judith, Second Maccabees 8:12, or 3, after being absent. So it's also used that way, such as Caesar comes on a royal visit. The later is clarified in 2 Thessalonians 2:9 when the parousia of the lawless one, or in 1 16:7 the parousia of Stephanus. Now, Ice and some of those try to talk about that, but the real point is that if you look at the Hebrew in there, the verb meta does not signify a direction. The Hebrew verb hawa is also used something that has come to pass. The Hebrew verb hacharuba, meaning to approach, indicates movement towards or to something. In context, the Son of Man is moving towards the or to the Ancient of Days, and that's where they get it wrong because they're not looking at the Greek there. It is interesting that I'm gonna look at that. We're gonna look at that real quickly. Those words, because I'm thinking it's important to show he's not coming as the Ancient of Days and being presented before him, because who's he being presented to, right? Who's he being presented? Not to himself. He's not being presented as the Ancient of Days. Somebody's coming and approaching that. Okay. And so it's all in verse 13. And we'll look at it in the Greek. Or, excuse me, the Hebrew here. Today's not my day sometimes. All right. Here it is. I was watching in visions night, and behold, with clouds of heaven, the one like Son of Man came. Came. And to the Ancient of Days he came, and before him they brought him near. So all of these, if you look at some of the wording, let me look at it from the other, and you'll see some of this a little bit more clearly. The one like the Son coming, and to the Ancient Days he came. You see those words? Coming, he came, before him, brought him near. Came and coming. Came means to arrive, to come, to bring, to be brought towards, to come to. So he came to 1934, the coming, to become, come to pass, have rules, things of beware, take heed. There's all kinds of different ways. But the idea is to become, come to pass. Let's go back. Come to pass. So, come to pass unto the Ancient Days that he came, 4291. This is a different coming, right? To reach, to attain. He attained. He reached up to it. He attained to. He was being presented to, or before him, is how the translators put that, right? And then the last one, he came, and before him they brought him near. To approach. So he is approaching the Ancient of Days. He's not coming as the Ancient of Days. He's being approaching the Son of Man. And that's the whole point there. That's where Sullivan tries to argue from the LXX that his things, he comes as the Ancient of Days, but he doesn't pay attention to the rest of the verse where it says he's being presented before him. He's receiving a kingdom. He didn't come down and receive the kingdom. He received all authority when he sat down at the right hand of the Father. That term, right hand of the Father, means then that what? He has the same authority as the Father. So in context, a man is moving toward to the Ancient of Days. It has no interesting sense of direction, nor the following preposition indicate direction. He's looking at the wrong word here. Ice does. The Son of Man approaches the Ancient, but even if it describes the Son of Man coming up to the Ancient, it only looks at the bestowment of authority, and that's true. But he still, when was the bestowment of authority? When he sat down at the right hand. So the combination of the three Hebrew verbs indicate together movement of where one comes to the other. The Ancient of Days resides in heaven, but the Son of Man who is different, is requiring he move towards or come to the other. Therefore, the direction of movement is to come to the Ancient of Days in heaven. And So this whole idea is an upward motion. Um, as in the Old Testament, God used armies of another nation to judge your nations. He rides on a swift cloud. This is how Matthew used the Greek word parousia, coming in judgment. Don Preston, in his book, Like Father, Like Son, Clouds Gorgeous in Nature, stated the same. The word parousia, as used by the disciples in Matthew 23, was not a word that meant a return, but a manifestation of the divine glory. Further, Jesus' reference to the Old Covenant predictions of the day of the Lord against Jerusalem for her persecutor ways. But all demands that when the disciples asked about the sign of Christ parousia, they were not thinking of an end-of-time event. They were thinking of a typical but consumed in history day of the Lord against the temple. I agree. Now, Paul uses the word differently. Jesus was not present in AD 70, so there's a difference there. The Olivet contains no language of a promise of a personal coming, i.e., second appearing as described by the apostles. Now, here is Dr. Jimmy Henry, somebody who was touted by Don Preston as having some good sense and agreement. And he stated in his book, I agree that Jesus quotes Daniel 17. Analyzing what this passage actually says, it will be helpful. Notice that the coming of the Son of Man is up, not down. The destination is in heaven, not earth. It is clear that Jesus was talking about his enthronement that took place when he ascended into heaven, sat down at the right hand of God. This took place in AD 33. So even people that Preston puts up there said the same thing. So he talks about Sam Frost differing with other people, and here he is promoting Jimmy Henry, but then completely disagreeing with him on this point. Now, if Son of Man coming down is not about his coming down, that makes it different for the Lord. Okay, so why do we get the idea that he's coming down? Well, the first one has to be Acts 1, right? That's when, right there. He physically ascends into heaven in front of them. And the angel says what? This same Jesus that you saw go in will also come down. 1 Thessalonians 4:16. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven. So it has to mean that. Josephus used the word parousia, history of the Jewish wars, when in reference to an army. Danielson connection with Matt Twin, who passed through the Blue Point. This is something that Michael Miano did. Posted on an article written by Bell. And the attack, he attacked Frost's understanding of the Daniel. The meaning of Daniel 7:13 through 14 is found not in the vision per se, but in the words revealed by the angel. What the angel described following Daniel's headache is not an ascension scene, but a judgment scene that is historically placed within the days of the fourth beast, Rome, and national Israel. Who makes more with the saints up in times come to the saints to possess the kingdom? But Dr. Jimmy Henry stated, as I quote her, it is clear that Jesus was talking about his enthronement that took place. And then in 33, so they shall not taste death before the Son of Man comes into his kingdom. When does he come into his kingdom? He comes into it, Daniel 7:13, 14, when he ascends. That's when he comes into his kingdom and is given dominion. Before they standing there, before they see the Son of Man coming, some not taste death. So they saw that judgment coming, and that is basically what it goes all the way through, folks. The Olivet never talks about Jesus himself coming down, and that's a pretty easy point. I can go through a lot more, like the passing of heavens and earth, and I'm not going to do all that. That was found in Matthew 24. But even when we go into 25, I'm going to bring out another point in how things are looked at and bring up the real distinction, the difference. In Matthew 25, I say there is no distinction in verse 36. Where people say that, well, now this is talking about the second coming. People, they didn't even understand that he was leaving. They didn't understand that he was going. Why would they think that he's going to be going away? And why would he then talk about him coming back when they don't understand he's going away? 36, but concerning the day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels, when this judgment is coming. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. The judgment that comes from the Son of Man is going to be just like in the days. They're not going to be ready. The judgment comes when they are not ready. For the days of the flood, they were eating and drinking. They carried on, and all of a sudden, bam! They were unaware that the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. The judgment that comes from him will come. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken up, and one will be left. One person will die. One people will be there. 2 women will be gathering at the mill. One will be taken. One left. And we're talking about the captives and those that were killed. For you do not know the day your Lord is coming in judgment. But now, that is the master of the house, had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and kept it from happening, right? And then he goes into it. Now, in Matthew 25, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps. Now, everybody usually associates this with his second coming. But look at it from the perspective of his first coming. Remember, there was a 500 year gap between the last prophet and the coming of John the Baptist. So, in a sense, God went away, right? And now the bridegroom, here he is, he's coming. At midnight, there was a cry, here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him. And this is talking then about his first coming. That all those virgins, all the Jews, all those people, oh, hey, we're not ready. We need some oil. The eyes wise, hey, there will be enough for us and for you. Go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. And they were going out to buy. The bridegroom came. Those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Lord, Lord, open up to be said, truly see, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour of when your Lord comes. And this was talking about his first coming. Think of it in that perspective. Does it match? Does it fit? Can you get that from that? Yeah. For it will be like a man going on a journey, called his servant, and trusted them to his property. The Jews were entrusted with the law. They left. How did they do? Not very well, some of them. So when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels went, he will sit on his glorious throne. His glorious throne is not here on earth. It was in heaven, right? And before him will be gathered all the nations and separate them one from another. So when he comes in his glory, there's going to be a separation, a judgment that happens. When is this talking about? This again can go back to Daniel 7, right? I mean, it's put in there in the same place. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. The clothing was white as snow, burning fire, stream fire. 1,000 served him, 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. Where's this from? If I pull up 10. Here it is, folks, 2011. Then I saw, be nice. I saw a great throne, white throne, one seated in it. Earth and heaven fled away from his presence. Heaven and earth passed away. Get that? It's gone. It's out of sight. It's there. It's not there anymore. His presence and no place was found for them. I saw the dead standing before the throne. The books were open. The dead were judged according to the deeds as recorded in the book. It goes on. It repeats exactly the same thing. There's the judgment seat from Daniel 7. So, I gotta think that what's going on there in Matthew 25 is the judgment scene. In other words, these people will be judged here. They are killed, and then they have to stand before the great day of the Lord, the great judgment of the Lord, when they will have to give an account. So, this whole chapter is not that difficult to understand and to believe. Now, why do a lot of that I chronicle and put it in my book and make the very point of this, that going down here, did I put it there? Yeah, let me put it this way. Yeah. And this is something I'll get into. I'll get into it later. I'm not talking about the dating, right? But the idea is that everything about the historical fathers and what they taught. They believed that the Olivet was destroyed, and the Olivet predicted the destruction of Jerusalem. They believed that was fulfilled, but they also believed that the second coming was still future. So here's people that lived within just a few years, especially the Epistle of Barnabas. He's the one who lived through it, was with Paul the whole 9 yards, who says the second coming is future. The Olivet was fulfilled, but the second coming is future. And, of course, then the full preterist has no choice but to dismiss all these claims from all of these people and everything else because, again, it completely destroys their narrative that they build up. So, I understand the two differences in that. The idea of parousia in the gospel has nothing to do with the second coming. Every mention of the parousia and about Christ coming, his epiphany and all that in the epistles is talking about in reference to Acts 1 where Jesus promised that he would come again, that he would be seen, and so forth. And we'll talk about the nature of all that. But I'm just making this real simple, folks. The Olivet was completely fulfilled in 70 A.D. But it's not about the second coming parousia, and it is not about him coming down. It was about him going up and sending judgment, as Matthew 26:64 points that out. Okay. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.